Oh, here's a nasty one. Both legs broken in this one. Now another one, facial, chest and hand injuries in that accident. Oh, that one was a fatality. Of all the machines used in the construction industry, cranes produce more work kilo for kilo than any other piece of machinery. But because of their great capacity for lifting loads and shifting loads, they can do a great amount of harm to people and cause a lot of material damage.
Safety doesn't start once I get my crane out on a job. It starts back in the yard where these cranes get serviced and checked over on a regular basis. If your crane's not in good running order, there's a good chance you'll have an accident. If you have an accident, somebody's likely to get hurt. And I reckon there's a good chance that that someone could be me. I'm the driver, so safety starts with me. Simple as that. In this film, I'm going to show you some of the things I'll keep a lookout for, and I'll demonstrate some of the stupid things I've seen some blokes do that have got them into trouble. Before I enter a site, I always check out the access road. Make sure the crane will get through. But I've seen guys do this. Just go blundering in. It's not the best on the machine, and you feel a bit of a galah when someone's got to drag you out. Both when you're travelling to the site and when you're operating your crane, another thing you've really got to keep a lookout for is power lines. If you get a few thousand volts down your boom, you'll get more than just a surprise.
Well, I can recall one involving a 30-tonne mobile crane that was operating under high tension lines, and because it was a very heavy load, the boom was bent under the weight. But as he put the load down, the boom moved upwards and contacted the power lines. The crane then became live. Now, the operator wasn't in any real danger until he tried to get off, and as soon as he made contact with the ground, he was electrocuted.
Where's that job you got?
I make sure of every detail of a job before I start. We're talking big money. Lost time, lost life, possibly, if there's an accident. So the project engineer, the site foreman, dogman, the owners, they all have a vital interest in the safety of the job. And I want to know exactly what's happening before I get into it. about half of all crane accidents are due to mistakes made during the setting up of the machine. Before I start setting up, I check first to see that there's enough room at the work area so I can get the machine into the best position. And you've got to check that there's going to be enough boom clearance too. I always try to set up so that I've got my crane centred between the lift point and the drop point. When you're lifting at the maximum capacity for a particular radius, a small increase in either your load or your radius is going to seriously reduce the margin of stability of the crane. With a mobile crane, the most important thing as far as your basic stability goes is the way you set up your outriggers. You've got to make sure that the ground is firm enough to carry both the weight of the machine and the load. How much packing you put under your outriggers depends on the type of ground. If I'm not sure what the ground's like, I check it out with the site foreman.
The operator wasn't aware that he was setting up on backfill that had never been really compacted. And when he set up, he put down what he thought was the adequate amount of packing under his outriggers. And he took the first load, and he got the load about 3 metres above the truck when his outrigger slowly started to sink into the ground. And of course, he should not have set up near an excavation, and if there was backfill there, it just wasn't solid ground anyway.
This crane's well set up on firm ground and it's dead level. That's really important because if your crane's not level, the margin of stability can be reduced and you can seriously affect the slewing of your crane. Whether you're working on a mobile or an overhead crane, you've got to be able to read your load chart. Also, you've got to have an accurate radius indicator. You need to know the radius so that you can get the safe load from the load chart. And you've got to remember to make the correct deductions for the extra weight of the fly jib in either position. Hook block, slings, any other attachment you've got. You just don't lift the load unless you know exactly what it weighs, especially if you're working near the maximum capacity. Okay, you may cost some lost production time while you're finding out, but I reckon a bloke making a lift without knowing whether the crane can handle the weight is looking for a lot worse than lost production time.
Well, you just don't lift a load unless you know what it weighs, and you can find out. You can ask the site foreman, you can go and look at the load itself. It could be a crate with the tear weight stamped on it. There are a number of ways you can find out, but there is a real danger. Unless you know the weight exactly, you can have an accident.
You've got to be able to recognise who to take signals from. Now, which one of these guys is going to give the signal to lift? That wasn't the dogman. That's him, the bloke you can clearly recognise with the white hat. The dogman is the only one whose signal should guide you. Any experienced driver's going to know his crane and the controls like the back of his hand. He won't need to read the names. But what if he's off sick tomorrow? What about the young fella that's just got his certificate, who stepped in for the day? Maybe he could do with the reminders, just to keep him out of strife. You don't lift your load unless your hoist rope is absolutely vertical. It can swing all over the place. You should use tag lines to steady and guide big loads, but you never wrap a tag line around any part of your body. You've got to be able to let go of it quickly, or the load can start swinging, and you'll go with it.
Well, a mobile crane was on the construction site, and it was moving the counterweights that were going to be used when they erected the tower crane. It had been raining most of the day, and the crane driver had left the cover off his hoist drum, which meant the rain was getting in on his main hoist brake. Crane drivers have a great responsibility. Firstly, they must ensure that the equipment is in first-class order before they use it. Now, having assured themselves that it is, they then have to be aware of all the possible dangers and hazards that they face. They're dealing with a variable situation, different sites, different conditions, soil, wind, loads, dynamic effects, and they must take all these into account when they make a lift. They're responsible for the safe operation of the crane. They must ensure at all times that they're fully aware of what they're doing. If they're not sure, don't lift. And that's probably the best advice they can get.
Yeah. Well, those blokes and their officers have all got theories on what we should do and what we shouldn't do. Well, listen, I'm the bloke who's in charge of the crane. I'm the one who has to make the decisions. If there's an accident, everyone's going to be looking for someone to blame, and I'm going to make sure it's not going to be me.